Hello and welcome back to the 100-day art challenge. Today this is going to be video number 66 and I'm going to be discussing a still life drawing that I did with my mum whilst we were sat on the train going to Manchester to go and meet with my brother and sister-in-law. And I asked her if she wanted to take a sketchbook with her and we could do a bit of drawing on the train, because my mum does a bit of art as well. And thankfully she did, because it's always really fun. And she really enjoyed this session as well. So what we did was that we put her handbag on the little tray table in front of us and both drew the handbag. And I showed her how I would draw it, because it's always a bit of a lesson, which I enjoy doing, because she knows that I do more drawing and painting than she does. So she wants me to show her how I do things. And I showed her how I drew a big box to get the big shapes at first, so the outside, the general shape of the handbag. And this is going to be filmed from a strange angle, so obviously you're not seeing it from above or straight ahead, but this is me recreating the drawing that I made, because at the time I actually didn't film the drawing we were doing on the train, and I did this drawing in my sketchbook, which means that it was actually drawn over a double page spread, and it's quite nice. Before doing the sketch, I was showing her in pencil some basic perspective ideas to show her 1 and 2 point perspective, but it was really scribbly because of the train rocking back and forth. So that was all just pencil scribbles on the page. And when we did the still life session, I thought I'll draw on top of those pencil scribbly lessons that I did, because I don't really care about those and they don't look great in the pad, but it looks great, the still life on top of those sketches. So I will show that drawing at the end of this video, but for now what I did was showing her how you draw the big shapes first, and then you start to chisel into that like you would with a sculpture, and just ignore overlapping lines, because that doesn't matter as much. All you want to do for this type of a drawing is to get the sense of what the object is and try to capture some of the different creases and shadows that you can do, and just to learn a little bit about cutting in as well. So I'll show you what I mean, but for now it's just getting some of the different elements of the bag. So where the bag cuts in from the, not cutting in cuts in, but where it is the angles cut inward from the big shape on the outside, so the big boxy shape, the angles of the handbag go in from that, which immediately shows a bit more form that's natural to a handbag. And then showing the straps of the handbag and the different creases that are more prominent. And then what I'm doing now is a bit of cutting in. So this is what I did to hide the big shape on the outside, is just drawing vertical lines to hide that we had this big boxy shape on the outside. And I thought it makes for quite a fun lesson, because it shows how you can do things quite loose at first and then refine them as you go along. And she did her drawing in pencil. I'm obviously doing mine in a grey brush pen, and I think this is a darker brush pen than I used on the day, and you'll see at the end it's quite a bit lighter, a grey, because what I do is I use the brush pen as almost like a sketchy underdrawing, and then I use a fine liner to draw black lines on top of that. Whereas in this recreation that you're watching at the moment, I use a black fine liner here, but it doesn't really have the same effect, because the grey brush pen is so dark that the black doesn't stand out on top of it like it did with the lighter grey. But the principle's the same, is that I use the grey to get the basic shape, and then I do more specific elements of the bag with the fine liner afterwards, because it's a finer nib and you can do a bit of hatching and a bit of the zip that kind of, for the opening of the bag, but also for the kind of, what would you call it? The lining of the bag as well, to try and give that double line instead of just doing a single line for everything to do with the bag. So that's why I'm doing a bit of a double line for a lot of the bag, and trying to bow certain lines as well so that they're not all straight, because it was a fabric that did bend, with the pressure of what was in it and the gravity pulling it down. And then this bit of hatching, as you can see, just to show that this is the inside of the bag, not open, but it was the inside of where the top was, the zip would be. So it dipped in and we'd just have a bit more tone to it. You'd have a bit of shadow in there. Whereas going over the straps like this, it's pretty much pointless. You can't really see the black line. But this is recreating what I did on the day, and I'm just going through the motions really to try and show you what it was like. But there is the odd line that you can do to cut in and show, and that's what I'm trying to do here. But it's an enjoyable shape to draw because it's got these really nice loops that overlap each other, and then the angles of the bag were quite interesting because as much as this may look like a normal rectangle, it's actually got some different diagonal shapes to it. It'll be easier to see at the end when I put the real picture on, which I did. But yeah, it was just fun as a way to show how to do semi-complicated imagery with some fairly basic practices. It's just like a technique of simplifying things that could become complicated. And as much as the handbag isn't necessarily complicated, I simplified it a lot more than it actually was at first with the big shape, and that's what I quite like about sharing things like this. But yeah, and the creases in the bag just add a bit of life to it, and I definitely developed those beyond what you can see there, because that's all quite rudimentary at the moment. It's just the first few marks, and then I just was quite keen to go in and get certain elements of the fine liner in there because it just develops and gives a bit more life to it. And you can see as soon as it goes onto the front of the bag to give this crease a bit of shadow, I think it just gives it a new life that it didn't have with just the grey marks. As soon as you can hatch with a fine liner and give detail to certain elements of the bag, then it becomes quite an interesting still life, even if it's still quite simple and relatively plain. But you can see here that there are more creases to show, and there are more sections of the bag to take interest in. Even when you're keeping things fairly basic, there are so many parts of the fabric of a handbag that will have slight creases and dents to them, and that will give you the opportunity to reflect on the tone. And instead of drawing boxes for all of the creases for this one, I thought what I'll do is I'll just let it become hatching to show and indicate where a crease occurred, and then that will distinguish it from the other parts, which not for any great reason outside of this is perhaps less of a deep dent than the others, and I think that's what it looks like. But yeah, it was fun to do, and I enjoy doing little still life studies with my mum. We've done a couple of these before, and I always enjoy doing a bit of drawing, and when she reflects on it, she really likes it as well. So this is the drawing that I did. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.